And I'm going to be completely honest, I still don't know how I'm going to title today's video. What title I'll give it, I'll see. But I'm very clear about what I want to convey to you. And it's that I'm leaving a consultancy, and sometimes when I finish consultations, I have a clear message that I think this will be very useful for more than one person. And it's understanding that the area of love, it's an area where we are not strategists at all. Why? Well, obviously because it's sentimental. And ultimately the opposite of having an analytical mind, a cold mind, a strategic mind, is indeed having an emotional view of the situation, an emotional view of what I should do, meaning we lose objectivity. We lose sight of what is convenient for us and let ourselves be guided a bit more by what we long for on an impulse level, on a more sentimental is the word. But in the end, sometimes, especially when relationships have already turned into a power situation, and when we also perceive them as a power situation, it's time to understand that what can help us at that moment is to set aside our usual approach and become strategists. I made a small pause because there was a little bird chirping, and I know that later it sneaks into the audio, and I don't want anything to distract us. Let's see, I have to understand one thing. When a relationship becomes unbalanced, I often, or most of the time, have the feeling that I can't do much. That is, I try to do what I can, but I am aware that the power of choice is in the hands of the other person. And this, if we could imagine it in our mind, in an example as if it were strength, let's say the other person is like big, a giant. We, on the other hand, who feel the most, especially if we are mentally involved, are small. We are like weak. I use this example so you can understand. So what happens? There are times when I intend to win a battle and I don't realize that I can't. That is, how am I going to beat someone much stronger than me? Being this weak, I can't. And the problem is that my stubbornness to stay, to persevere, to often believe that I have no other option, right? Keeps me in this situation, and I become even smaller each time. And sometimes the problem is that even to walk away, you need a certain strength. And sometimes we already lack the sufficient strength even to take that step, right? And it's when we are in situations where this ends when the other person, to top it off, kicks us out of their life or puts a stop to us. That is, we no longer have the option to choose. And it's precisely when I feel like this, when I am aware that I have completely given myself, that I am involved up to my knees, that emotionally I feel super vulnerable. And it's what they say, whoever falls in love first is likely to end up losing. They are the weak one, the one who can get hurt. So when I have fallen in love first and gotten attached and the other person hasn't, I have to understand that there is only one strategic move that can solve this situation. And that is for me to gather strength. That is to say, if I am on the battlefield, so to speak, understand me, obviously it's not a battle, but sometimes we experience it as such. We experience it, as I said before, as a power game, right? If I am in that power game, and I often feel that frustration, that helplessness of feeling that I have nothing to act with, that it is that person who unilaterally decides everything and does and undoes and has that emotional power, that control over me. And I try at all costs to do everything to feel that I have some sense of control, of emotional power over that person, and I don't have it. I have to understand that and say, okay, instead of facing this with alarmism, which also happens when we are in that sentimental moment, we also approach distancing as if it's the end of the world. The end of the world for us and with that person, and now everything has gone wrong and so on. Stay calm. Really try, let's connect a bit with the strategic mind. That person is not going to disappear from the face of the earth. Neither will you. That is to say, things don't always end or aren't always as they are today. Sometimes you need to have a bit because strategy, what is it? It's having foresight, right? It's doing something today not with the intention of getting a result today, but with the intention of planting a result for later, right? So if I realize that I am small and that I don't have the option to balance this, I have to withdraw. Not with the idea that everything ends here, but with the idea that I need to become strong again. And I will return when I am strong. I will reappear when I am strong, and then we will see. But right now, it's the only intelligent thing I can do. Because being this small and weak, I have no weapons. I have no way to change the situation. Probably the situation will simply become less favorable for me each time. I have to understand that when I withdraw, even if temporarily, I strategically gain the option of a new beginning, which plays a decisive role in many things. That is to say, if I want someone to perceive me differently, it's very beneficial for us to have a break in which their mind doesn't have us so fresh, right? If I want to make changes in the dynamics, a break is also important. That is to say, what would a change in dynamics be? Something very typical that I encounter, right? That is to say, this person might reply to you after 10 hours, not reply at all, leave your messages on read, and so on. But you? Oh, you don't want to do anything that suggests that you're not there, that you're not interested. You don't miss opportunities. For example, you haven't heard from this person in 3 weeks, but they tell you on a Friday evening if you want to meet, and you meet. Because your desire to see them is so strong that even though you know it's not the right thing to do, because this person hasn't considered your schedule, your time, or the courtesy of notifying you, because you sense that they want to meet for their own reasons, and you know that maybe you weren't even their first choice, right? Despite everything, you weigh the options and say, no, I can't do it. I want to see this person, right? To whatever extent possible. So let's say all those dynamics that ultimately send the wrong message to the other person, that I don't respect myself, I don't set boundaries, I'm unconditionally available. All those dynamics, if you start to change them while still being in contact, it's not as effective as if I take a break. With the break, you will already spark the curiosity of the other person who doesn't see you as capable of taking a break, right? So let's say it's like a very good starting point. It's like throwing a smoke bomb, right? And suddenly the person is like, how strange, what's happening here? And when the smoke clears, they indeed find someone new. So it's not the same for you to start changing certain dynamics tomorrow as it is to have a break. And once you resume contact, your way of acting is no longer the same. Believe me, I've seen it in practice. And it's quite different. Mentally, the other person perceives it in a much more favorable way when there has been that break. And one thing that probably has even happened to you is being in the situation you are in, looking back and thinking, why didn't I do things differently? I would have liked to handle the situation at that point, but I feel like now it's too late, right? That I should have put that there. Not have given so much at this point, not have crossed the boundaries here. That is to say, there are certain moments when we are aware that there was a turning point and we regret how we handled the situation. We would like to see how we have involved ourselves many times. That is to say, I would have liked not to give myself so quickly, not to get lost in fantasy, not to fall in love so quickly with how I have handled things with the person. But sometimes we try to redirect the situation, don't we? We might watch a video and it appeals to our self-esteem, to our dignity, and we say, it's true, I'm going to do it differently. We try, but we don't get results. Why? Because indeed, realistically, that person already has an image of us in the situation. There are already roles assigned. That is to say, the perception we used in the metaphor that this person is big and has all the power and you are small is really the feeling that both of you have. It's not a feeling that only you have. That person feels that way too. And I can tell you from experience that few things are worse than relating to or leaving your heart in the hands of a person intoxicated with power. Because when humans feel that excess of power, it brings out the worst in us. We truly start to act in a way that is not the most desirable. So, that's why I tell you, if you want to redirect the situation, if you would have liked to handle this differently, to have done it differently, it's not too late. It's not too late, but changes do need to be made. And small changes are not enough. As I say, we have to earn that opportunity. Let's say at almost starting from scratch. And for that, there needs to be a strategic pause that is not just 1 day or 2 days, but more. I'm talking about weeks sometimes. Months. Ideally, at least a month and a half. At most, maybe 2 months, because we don't want to lose sight of the person too much. I'm also going to tell you something. What scares us the most when considering a withdrawal strategy with the intention of returning is who might slip in during that time frame. Well, the same people who can slip in now will slip in, exactly the same ones, because when you're in an unbalanced situation, your presence there doesn't dissuade the person from anything. It doesn't dissuade them from meeting other people, spending time with other people. It doesn't dissuade them from falling in love with someone else, because since they haven't fallen in love with you, and given the current situation, that is, an unbalanced situation, if it continues over time, it won't reverse. When things are already unbalanced, if the person hasn't fallen in love, staying together for 2 more years won't make them fall in love. Only a change could provoke falling in love. Either a sincere withdrawal on your part, meaning that the person, by losing you, reconsiders the situation. Or, if that's not what you want, then a temporary withdrawal that allows us to have a second, first opportunity. In other words, a second chance to make a new impression, to change things, to handle things differently this time. Staying in an unbalanced situation over time. So, you stay out of fear, that's it. I leave, and then they meet someone. If they are meant to meet someone, they will meet them even with you there, and I don't know what. So we have to be aware that even if we think we have control, we don't. If the person is not in love with you, they are free to fall in love with someone else. So the best and most strategic thing, putting aside the romantic tint, is not to waste time. I will not waste time in withdrawing, strengthening myself, and returning to give myself the opportunity to be me. This time, by handling the situation much better, I might achieve a different outcome with that person. Another thing I've observed in practice that worries a lot when we are going to make a strategic withdrawal is the fact of how to justify it to the person. We fear not having an explanation, and that later the person won't want to resume contact later, which might be too late for us. Look, to begin with, the best thing is that when you do this, you don't say anything to the person. You simply stop acting. And there are occasions where this is so unbalanced that indeed, the moment you stop acting, there will be much more silence. Sometimes there will be absolute silence. There will be absolute distance. And you'll be left like, wow, now I realize I was the one doing everything. But the person is not going to come to you asking for explanations, so you don't have to worry so much about what to say. Now let's say that you stop acting, stop seeking, stop contacting, and you realize that the distance we fear so much arises, you face it. Instead of giving in to sorrow, you dedicate yourself to doing your work. That is to say, I'm going to take advantage of this distance to strengthen myself. From my nervous system that is overwhelmed from being on edge, about you and what I can do and how I can communicate, because it's a pressure. Maintaining a relationship unilaterally is a real mental pressure. It drains a lot of energy, doesn't it? So regain your energy, your peace, and say, now I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to exercise, eat healthy, engage in activities that nurture me, connect with self-love videos, with information about self-love, and become clearer about what the boundaries are and what I should have done differently. What should I expect from someone? What do I deserve? Reconnect with loving yourself more, taking better care of yourself, and being more present for yourself. As I say, you dedicate that time to yourself. And now imagine that at a given moment, the person contacts you. Because even the weakest person in the most unbalanced relationship might, after some time, when they realize it's indeed strange that you're not there, do something. Sometimes when we ignore an attempt, things just stay as they are. And the person doesn't take it too seriously, right? We fear that the day I want to come back, they won't take me back. They are not experiencing it like you are. Unfortunately, fortunately, or unfortunately, and in this case, fortunately, right? For you, that distance is overwhelming, painful. It's a challenge, right? You are aware of the time passing, right? But that person is not experiencing it that way. So they don't experience the grievance in that way. Let's say they have nothing to take revenge for. They don't have that thirst of, now you'll see when you come back, because they haven't suffered as much. But the good thing about them not having suffered as much is that indeed, the more you make a veiled approach or set a bait to resume contact, right? Let's say, for example, let's say you carry out this withdrawal along with a break from social media, which I recommend because it's very good, at least at the beginning. Then after some time, you might return with different posts. As I say, now posts that indicate you're in a different mood, but especially a mood of taking better care of yourself, pampering yourself more, right? You're exercising, you're going out with friends, you look happy, you look well. All these kinds of posts, right? So there are times when just with this, the person on their own either will give you a like or comment something, or hey, how are you? In most cases, it's like that. I mean, you don't even have to rack your brain about what you're thinking. And now I'm leaving. And now how do I come back? And how do I explain that I left and all that? No. Many times it's enough to set a bait and this person contacts you and you react with complete normality. Why? Because it's also about not taking things the same way from now on, not getting involved in the same way. You shouldn't treat this as a goal again, nor take on the burden of the relationship. But you do allow the contact to be reestablished. However, you are not the same person who left. I have to understand that it's not about returning to the previous dynamic. That's why it's not about taking a break and being anxious about, when we resume, I want to see what results this brings. This time I'm going to do it differently. Because in the meantime, I will have been informing myself and will understand the importance of allowing the other person to give to me, because when they make an effort, they self-justify. I will understand that it's not so important to achieve a lot, but rather to go slowly, letting the other person seek me out, get involved, and show interest. That is to say, I can't treat this as, well, I'm withdrawing for 2 months or a month and a half, and when I return, as soon as this person gives me a like or a photo, asks me how I am, boom, I start seeking conversation and go back to the grind. Well, you're going to end up just like before. This time we want to handle it differently. That is to say, we are no longer that little dwarf who had to make all the efforts. We have become strong, and we want that person to perceive us as an equal. And for that, we have to show them that this time we are not going to chase after them. But rather, if this happens, it has to flow in a balanced, equitable way. Otherwise, we're not interested. The days of making great efforts are over. Rowing alone for the relationship is over. Moreover, this is, even if the person doesn't know it, an ultimatum from our side. That is to say, I could completely close the door because you have shown me that today you don't want to give me what I deserve and forget about you. But let's say I am recovering, and before kicking you out of my life, I am going to give you the opportunity to value things for the second time. This time, with me doing things right. Let's say it's also about assuming my part of whatever might have gone wrong, my share of the blame, right? Maybe I realize, oh my, it's true that I am a person who tends to get obsessed very quickly, right? Maybe this person and I had a couple of interactions, and I was already, fantasizing, and I got too involved too quickly, I made it too easy. I could have done it better, right? Well, this is like your chance to redeem yourself, to do it better. And it's the opportunity to see how things would have turned out if you had done it differently. You give that opportunity to the person. If you realize that by handling this better, being more in your element, more controlled, not chasing after things don't flow, then yes, you step back. But let's say that since you've taken this preliminary step, even if you had to let it go there, it would be easier than doing it from the start, right? But it's about that. It's not about filling myself with anxiety from a distance to then go all out. It's about understanding that love isn't about going all out. Love isn't about making great efforts. Love is about the extent to which I can love myself the most, because that's what I will receive from others later. Well, I hope this video is helpful to you and that you liked it. If so, and you're not yet subscribed to the channel, of course, I invite you to do so and hit the bell so we can see each other again very soon. And until then, as always, I send you a big kiss.